My shivers stopped as soon as I heard her. It had to have been her. I knew no other pony who took the dirt path between my house and her farm. Under the roar of a summer's rainy downpour, I heard scuffling hooves against the wooden stoop of my cabin's patio. I looked up from where I sat with a pen and paper, finishing the final touches to a written composition of The Threnody of Night. Before me, the flames of a brick-laid fireplace had dwindled to a dim glow. I was so engrossed in work that the invisible winds of cold were barely bothering me. The rain continued to pound against the wooden rooftop shingles, and still I heard her lingering just outside. I was more curious than concerned. Adjusting the sleeves of my hoodie, I stood up, trotted across the cabin, and swiftly opened the door. Applejack jumped and spun to face the entrance, gasping. I wasn't used to seeing her startled, much less soaking wet. The poor mare stood on the porch, drenched from head to tail. Blonde bangs framed a freckled face beset with shivers, and she blushed a shade of red embarrassment. "Greetings," I said with a placid smile, keeping the door ajar with glittering magic. "Kinda lousy day for a walk, isn't it?" "Oh, pardon me," Applejack muttered and fidgeted. The world was a thick curtain of veritable waterfalls behind her. The dirt path snaking past the cabin had long morphed into a dark brown river of mud, and the bright light of the afternoon refracted a ghostly gray sheen across the forest stretching beyond. Shucks. This looks really, really bad, I reckon." She chuckled sheepishly. I spotted a basket bundled with soaked towels beneath her, as if she was using the last vestiges of her own dry flesh to keep the package from being spoiled any further. "I only meant to take a breather from this dag-blamed flood. I swear Pegasi don't give as much as solid warnings like they used to." I shrugged. "It came as a surprise to me as well. Normally, I'm always out and about. Today, though, I just happened to be inside, working on something. Speaking of indoors, you look as though you could use a change of scenery." "Think nothing of it." Applejack shook her head and pointed out at the offending monsoon. "I'm sure it'll clear up, eventually. Don't you fret none. I'll be out of Maine soon. Was my intention to oppose. Now what kind of pony would I be to leave a soul like you drowning out here in the rain?" I trotted backward a few steps and motioned inside the cabin. "March inside. I've got a fireplace in here. Let's get you warmed up." Applejack bit her lip. She gazed at me, at the rain, at her basket, and then at me again. "You absolutely sure that I ain't gonna be a bother?" I grinned shyly. "Get your sopping wet tail in here before I change my mind." "Well, all right." She shuddered before humbly shuffling into the cabin with the basket in tow. "Whew! You know, I don't rightly remember this place, which is a bit odd, considering I walk this path so often. Didn't there used to be an old barn round these parts?" "There could have been," I said with a smile, closing the door behind her so that we were both sealed off from the chilling moisture outside. "I'm a little new to town, relatively speaking." "Well, howdy do, and welcome to the neighborhood," Applejack said. I slid a bucket toward her. Taking a hint, she placed her hat down on the floor and began wringing her long blonde threads over the metal container. "I swear, though, this cabin must have sprouted up overnight." Not exactly," I said. I marched over toward the fireplace and levitated 3 fresh logs out of a metal stand to one side. "But I don't blame you for not noticing it. I'm not exactly the kind of pony who attracts attention easily. It's only fitting that my house carries a bit of the same habit." I dropped the new planks of wood at the base of the chimney and stroked the flame. Soon, a brilliant glow was once again spreading through the cabin, this time heating up more than just myself. "I noticed the apple trees you got planted between here and that shed you've got out back," she said. She paused, rolling her eyes, and then smirking to herself. "Heh, of course I'd noticed the apple trees. No crime in that." "I noticed that they're grafted. You planted them yourself?" I trotted across the cabin, past my bed, and opened a wooden cabinet full of fresh towels. "Yes, but I had some help." I've got an orchard full of hundreds more just like them up the road. So we're neighbors, I grinned at her. Heh, I reckon we are. Now, I feel bad for not saying howdy sooner. How's that for rotten hospitality? Her voice trailed off as she gazed up toward the walls of the place. Huh, would you look at that? I trotted back toward her. I trailed her eyesight, observing the numerous musical instruments lining the wall. The two of us were surrounded by a rather familiar assortment of flutes, guitars, harps, chimes, violins, cellos, and clarinets, all hanging from metal fasteners across the interior of the small, fire-lit cabin. Oh, I'm a musician, I hummed, as if that could succinctly explain the undeniable forest of orchestral tools surrounding us. There's one good reason why I'm not living in the center of town. With all the racket I'm bound to make, the most hospitality I'd get would be a swift kick to the flank. You're composing or something? I'm searching. Applejack stopped wringing her mane and bit her lip. I reckon I don't get it. Neither do I. I smiled and handed the towel to her. Until I find what I'm looking for, that is. And then it's another mystery. She took the towel and I marched once again toward the fireplace, smoking the flame once more. The name's Lyra, by the way. Lyra Heartstrings. Applejack. She introduced herself like it was the first time. It was always the first time, and I can't help but feel charmed on each and every occasion. There's a melodic tone to that pony's voice when she thinks she's never spoken to you before, and the twang of Applejack's is something that violins can only dream to sound like. I look forward to the day when I get to hear it again. My life is a symphony that way. I swear, I wasn't fixing to burden any pony, she continued. I would have made it home safe and sound had the rainstorm started just a sneeze later. Why the crosstown trek, if I may ask? 'Cause of this. Applejack draped the towel over her neck and began stripping the basket of its soaked wrapping. Oh, dear Celestia, please don't be ruined. Phew. She exhaled with relief as she pulled the tiny alicorn doll out into the amber light of the fireplace. The toy was dry, about the driest thing in the cabin, and she nuzzled it like it was her own infant. I would have plumb tossed myself off a cliff if something bad came of this. Well, your secret's safe with me, Miss Applejack, I said with a goofy wink. Huh? She blinked up at me and then frowned. No, hush, 'tain't nothing like that. She cleared her throat and placed the doll back into the basket. It belongs to my little sister, Apple Bloom. Her ma gave it to her just before she and Pa tragically passed away. May they rest in peace. She squatted down and exhaled, reveling in the warmth from the fireplace as she continued speaking. Apple Bloom's having a bout of the pony pox right now. It always happens to us Apple family ponies at her age. My experience was anything but a bed of roses, so I wanted to make it a bit easier for her. I went into town and had her doll patched up and freshly cleaned, but on the way back, well... She motioned toward the walls of the cabin, still echoing with the deluge of rain pounding from the outside world. I almost had a heart attack. I couldn't allow Apple Bloom's doll to get all ruined up again. Maybe now you can understand why I stole on your patio like I did. You didn't steal anything, Applejack, I said calmly. I completely understand, but if you ask me, this doll's the least you should be worried about. Here. I reached toward my cot and pulled free a wooden blanket. No need to have two members of the Apple family coming down with something nasty. Oh, please, Miss Heartstrings, I can't... Shh. I draped the blanket over Applejack and shoved her closer to the fireplace. You can just relax. You've been through a rain-soaked nightmare. It's the least I can do. She took a deep, shuddering breath and soon was nestled comfortably before the flames as her body dried in the toasty aura. I reckon this feels mighty nice. I smiled. I would think as much. Kinda reminds me of the fireplace we got back at the farm, she said, tightening the folds of the blanket around herself. Her green eyes danced with crackling embers. My pa built it. He once told me that he went by the same unwritten blueprints that his father and his father's father before him used when the Apple family first settled in this part of Equestria. Can you imagine it? So many homes all using that same kind of thing. It just goes to show. I squatted down across from Applejack and gazed softly at her. You can get away with amazing things as long as you have a good foundation.